Happy Hump Day. On our Sports First agenda today, we have breaking news out of the Premier League and out of Serie A. We're going to get to that before talking Juergen Klopp, who has entered the Messi versus Ronaldo battlefield, and he's picked his winner. We reveal who that is. Plus another debate. Is Zlatan really all that similar to Michael Jordan? He seems to think so, but do George DiMatteis and Thomas Rongen agree? And then we hop on the transfer train and travel to Italy as Barcelona raid Serie A for defenders, and we also travel back in time because on this day 2 years ago, Arsene Wenger's time at Arsenal came to an end. Will the Invincibles ever be once again? Sports First starts now. Hello, party people. This is a reminder to join the conversation and comment below, and I'm going to get to your comments throughout the show. I want to welcome in Thomas Rongen and George DiMatteis into the show and begin with Serie A. We are going to, let's start with the latest breaking news, and I'm not even sure if you guys have heard this because it literally just broke a couple minutes ago, but Serie A has selected a provisional date to restart the league. That provisional date is June 13th. All of the clubs met today, and they chose the 13th over the 20th, so they want to start ASAP. Not a real shocker there. The other update is that group training is going to begin on Monday. The teams and clubs have been individually training, but group training is now scheduled to begin on Monday. Thomas, we'll begin with you. Serie A seem to be headed in the right direction here.
Yeah, and it all, if you look at how countries handle the virus and how countries have responded to the pandemic, being Germany, one of the countries in the world that have done a great job. The Bundesliga is starting, obviously, and slowly you're seeing in Spain, in England, and now also in Italy, the return of football, which is great. We see now that players are flying back from their respective hideouts or where they stayed in isolation to join their clubs with the knowledge probably that they know training will start, and games are going to be not just around the corner but will be coming up shortly as well. And that's very good news, obviously. Welcome news to all of us, which is important, that the safeties factors and regulations are being put in place, the players are being tested properly, and that everybody does everything to ensure that safety comes first. And we've heard some players concerns about returning to not only training but games, obviously, but that's slowly starting to ease, and that's good news for the world.
Absolutely. And George, before I hand it over to you, I do want to reiterate that this decision is still pending government approval. So this is the date that the league has decided on, the clubs have all agreed on. But from my understanding, it is still pending the government approval. We are going to speak to Tancredi Palmeri in our PM edition of Sports First. But George, your initial thoughts to this news?
Well, my initial thought is I hope they're not rushing back too soon. And I felt the same way when we heard the news about the Bundesliga and obviously La Liga starting to get back to training as well. But I don't know. I mean, I just feel like there's still an issue of getting these players back and starting the league over public health concerns. I mean, Paulo Dybala caught it 4 times. So we know that once you have it, you can have it again and again and again. So I hope that they're doing this, they're coming from a place of understanding, of testing to try to prevent the spread, but it still feels like it's too rushed for me, and that they should just reset for next season. But they're doing what they have to do, and I think all of us want to see football back, or calcio back in this instance if we're talking about Serie A. So we will see what happens, but it still feels a little too rushed to me.
Well, and you're certainly not alone in that thought process, George, because even the likes of Piqué in La Liga has said, you know, he wouldn't mind an extra day or two to get back into full training to keep these players from getting injured. So that's definitely a spot-on thought process. Thomas, you spoke about some players being vocal about maybe not wanting to return, which brings us to the Premier League. The Players Association met today with Project Restart, and players were handed a 40-page packet on safety regulations. I want to outline some of those safety regulations and then get your thoughts on them, Thomas. Players will drive to training in their kit alone in their cars. Their temperature will be checked at the entrance of the training grounds. They will park in designated spaces, 3 spaces away from their fellow players. There's no food at the training ground, no spitting or tackling allowed during these training sessions. Everything will, of course, be disinfected. Do you think that this is enough? Do you think that these will ease these players' concerns, Thomas?
Well, I don't think it will ease all players' concerns. We all know that most players want to go back to playing. That's their livelihood. That's what they want to do. They are entertainers. All of us have been cooped up for several months right now and can't wait to go outdoors and can't wait to do our normal activities. So these stringent rules are there for a reason. And I think that the unions are going to play a huge role in this. MLS didn't announce, but a few sources I talked to, MLS is trying to do something in Orlando with all 26 teams, or in bubble cities, in 4 or 5 cities with 6 or 7 teams, away from their families for at least 2 months, testing twice a week. And talking about testing, this is a tough one, because you know what? There's a lot of people in the world that are not able to get any testing done. And are we morally equipped to say, yeah, these professional guys, they can test 2 or 3 times a week. That's fine. So I think there's some moral issues, and I think that some union members I've spoken to, both in the EPL and in MLS, there's quite a few players that are concerned about the future and getting back too early, which is all driven, let's be real honest. Yes, we love soccer, but it's driven by economics. And economics should take the backseat to health and safety. And as I said again, one death is not... we shouldn't risk one death over the return of sports in general, but in particularly soccer that we so dearly love.
Absolutely. I wanted the comment section before I send it over to you, George, with a different aspect of this equation. Ryan Moran saying Zlatan and Jordan are similar. Yeah, we're a little bit confused too. We are going to get to that in just a couple minutes. Jaben Karama saying if it's behind closed doors, it's okay, but allow the fans in the stadium and that would be a big mistake. And now this brings us to the neutral ground, the neutral venues conversation, because a lot of Premier clubs are against this idea of playing at neutral grounds. But on the flip side, if you have these teams and these matches played as home and away, there is a concern that fans will still be meeting outside of the stadium. Sure, they're not allowed in, but you would assume that they would congregate around the stadium to welcome their players in or welcome their team in. And so that is a major concern. What's your take on the neutral ground discussion, George? Oh, did we lose George DiMatteis? Oh, no, I think we did. All right. Thomas, did you hear that question? Can you, what's your take on the neutral venues?
Yeah, I mean, the neutral venues is interesting. If you look at all the leagues, the people that complain the most are the people that are in the relegation zone.
Right.
They want to play at home because those teams that are not great teams rarely get any success on the road. So they are contingent on playing at home, regardless if it's with or without fans, to get home field advantage, so to speak. You get the teams that are vying for European slots, be it UEFA Champions League or the Europa League as well, that are around 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in their respective countries. Home field advantage, again, if you look at the stats, obviously, favors the home team. So I understand that battle is going on. You rarely hear a team that's in 10th position, by the way, and got nothing to play for the remainder of the season, complain about neutral or home sides, so to speak. I actually think that maybe a neutral side, like MLS is doing, in potentially Orlando, plenty of hotels. Every team can have their own hotel, be isolated. There's plenty of fields to play as well. And you really reduce the risk factor. Fans won't travel there. That, to me, might be the way to go. Although Germany right now is obviously doing the opposite. They're playing home and away like the regular schedule still calls for the rest of the season.
Right, and we'll see how that goes this weekend in their first weekend back. But you touched on the money piece of this, and the money piece also plays a huge role because there's sponsorship deals with these stadiums, and that's why a lot of these clubs still want to play at their stadiums because those sponsorship deals are also going to take a hit. Clearly a very complex situation, but I want to move on and get to a topic that's a little bit more fun. Hopefully we get Juergen Klopp back on, but if not, it's you and I, Rongen, and I want to talk about Juergen Klopp because he has chosen his side in the Team Messi versus Team Ronaldo battle, and it is, drumroll, Lionel Messi. He said Messi has much lower physical requirements from birth on. If you could paint yourself a perfect player, it would have Ronaldo's height. He could jump and run as quick or as high as Ronaldo can do. And what is even added is his total attitude. But on the other side, you have small Messi, who makes everything look so simple, and therefore I like him maybe a little bit more. Thomas, did Juergen pick the right side of this argument?
I mean, we've been debating this for over a decade right now, and it's the biggest football debate of the 21st century. Let's be real honest. Two superstars dominating the last decade will be up there with Pele, Cruyff, and Maradona, and maybe even surpass them when it's all said and done, and leave a legacy that might be very hard to break for some young and up-and-coming stars like an Mbappe, for instance, and Neymar to take that mantle. But one word that stuck out to me, or actually in regards to Ronaldo, he describes the modern player. And if you look the way the game is going, it's more athletic, it's more strength, it's more power. And that's Ronaldo. The attitude of the great professional that Ronaldo is as well. His strength, his pace, that makes him the best in the world. But he uses the word simple with Messi. And one of my former teammates, Johan Cruyff, once said, playing football is very simple. But playing simple football is the hardest thing to do. And the ability for Messi to make the game simple is incredible. He's the only one in the world where things seem to slow down before he gets the ball. We're going to talk about Jordan a little bit later. He sees things earlier. He makes it look easy. He always makes the right decisions, be it off the dribble, be it a one-touch pass, being looking for an overlap player. So, yeah, I agree with Wenger that Messi's probably a little bit ahead in terms of being more creative and things like that. But, man, that's so tight in my opinion, and you can make a case for both. But this instance, in terms of simplicity and the purity of the game, which is the hardest thing to do, although it sounds simple, it's not, as Cruyff said, that sets Messi apart from anybody else on the planet.
And Juergen is back with us. We hope you can still hear us, George. I wanted to get your thoughts on Juergen Klopp picking Messi over Ronaldo in that epic battle, and his explanation saying that Messi is simply simpler, and so he thinks that maybe edges him a bit over Ronaldo. Your thoughts?
I could see where he's coming from. I mean, I'm not going to go and pick one or the other, because we all know that debate, and that's just a whole can of worms you want to open. But when you look at the points that he made, the specific points that he made, I could understand why he made that decision. But if you were to choose and say, who do you want on your team, you can't go wrong either way. But I think what Juergen Klopp said in terms of the specific points that he made, I think he was right on with that. And you have to admire the fact that he took a stance, but he wasn't knocking Ronaldo as well. I think a lot of times when we get this Messi-Ronaldo debate, we have to put down one to elevate the other. But he did a great job of highlighting the strengths of both of them. So I can understand why he said that, and it's a great argument. He makes some great points.
Yeah, and you're spot on. He did. He complimented both and really didn't put down one in order to choose the other. I want to hit the comment section. Jorge Wolf Hurtado saying Messi is pure raw talent, not saying that CR7 doesn't have ridiculous talent, but Messi just has that extra it factor. Ray's Gaming Lair says he totally nails it. Ray also saying that he totally agrees with Andrew Contura. Nice to see you guys getting along in the comment section. Bob Flakema saying Klopp nailed it. Gino saying Klopp called Messi simple. Shots fired, of course. A little twist on words there. But yeah, really interesting. And Thomas, you brought up the Michael Jordan talk, so let's go there. Zlatan Ibrahimovic has put out a tweet, and he said, quote, "Nice to see the last dance. Now you see how it is to play with a winner. Either you like it or not. If not, then don't play the game." Zlatan clearly maybe seeing himself within Michael Jordan, within this documentary. Do you think there's really any similarities between the two? Because Michael has certainly won quite a bit more than Zlatan, do you think? George, we'll begin with you.
There are no similarities whatsoever. Okay, I hope Zlatan was not trying to compare himself to the great Michael Jordan, because Zlatan Ibrahimovic has, as a player that I'm not a fan of, look, he's entertaining, a highly skilled footballer, but he hasn't won Champions League. This is a man who hasn't even scored a World Cup goal. Okay, he may be a winner because he's played for the teams that always win domestic titles. You play for Ajax, you're going to win a domestic title. You play for Juve, Inter, Milan, you're going to win a Scudetto or Coppa Italia. You play for PSG when they are outspending Liga combined by 10 times more than the other teams combined, you're going to win Trophée de Champion or Liga. But when it came to the big ones, the World Cup, the Champions League, he is not a superstar. You can't compare a very good player to a superstar. And Michael Jordan was a jerk to his teammates because he was trying to get them to win championships and get them to be mentally tough. Ibrahimovic was a jerk to his teammates because he just was trying to he was arrogant and cocky, and he was trying to show his teammates that he was better than them. He didn't improve anyone. There's not one teammate that could come out and say that Zlatan made me a champion. None. But Michael Jordan has a ton of teammates that can say, yeah, the work ethic, what he did in practice was harsh. He was a jerk, but I got 3 championship rings because of him. Jordan won the pinnacle. Whatever was the top of his game, Jordan won it. The top of what Ibra's game, he hasn't even come close to a final. So there's no way that he compare. If he compares himself, his ego is ridiculous, and he needs to get checked for his ego.
Right, and I think, George, you just hit the nail on the head. What he's comparing to is his behavior, is him being maybe a little bit tough to work with, a little straightforward, not sugarcoating things to his teammates. And I think Michael Jordan has earned that respect, where it's still questionable whether Zlatan has earned the right to treat his teammates like that. Thomas, what's your take on it?
Well, I talked to some players that played with Zlatan, not just in MLS, but predominantly in MLS with the LA Galaxy, and during those 2 years, nobody really dared to come out and challenge Zlatan. I spoke to the coaching group there as well, and they had to walk on eggshells with Zlatan, not knowing what they would get from game to game. Saying that he won 31 titles, saying that there is some similarities in the way they go about doing their business. But Michael Jordan is probably, in my opinion, the second best athlete in the world in all sports after Muhammad Ali. And George is absolutely right. It's hard to compare that. But saying that, again, I played with some great players, including Cruyff, and there's tough love there. Johan Cruyff is very direct. Johan Cruyff is very hard. Johan Cruyff, sometimes through fear and intimidation, got players to buy into what he wanted to do and how to become successful and how to push that threshold of physical and mental pain just a little bit further, beyond that you're capable of doing in your own mind. And that's where I think both athletes have somewhat excelled. Zlatan leads by example too. You know, I mean, has scored some goals throughout his career. Is tough on his players, but you cannot put both in the same category of greatest ever. But I can see why Zlatan looks at Michael Jordan and looks, well, I've done some of that stuff before, coming to blows, for instance, fights in training, finding ways to make players better, and that's sometimes through fear and intimidation. And that's what happened with Jordan, where he brought himself and his teammates through all of that. Tough love, really, at the end of the day, through great heights.
Our comment section is agreeing with you guys. Ray Ray's Gaming Lair, heck to the no, not even close. Jorge Wolf Hurtado, Zlatan can't compare to Jordan because he never played Major League Baseball, LOL. Andrew Contura, Jordan's ability to put fear into his teammates is like Zlatan, to push them to be better. We are not arguing that Zlatan is the GOAT, but that he has a rude demeanor to mentally prepare them. Yeah, but I'm not sure that rude demeanor was warranted. Brendan Burns brings up an interesting point. If anyone is like Jordan, it's CR7, killer instinct. If there is a player currently actively playing that you would compare to Michael Jordan, who would it be, George?
Well, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. And the difference is, well, first of all, and Gabby, you know this, 2014 World Cup playoff, it was basically Zlatan versus Cristiano Ronaldo, Sweden versus Portugal.
Right.
And the real superstar destroyed Sweden. 4-2 on aggregate. Cristiano scored all 4 goals, 3 in Sweden. So it's definitely Cristiano Ronaldo. And Zlatan got in fights with teammates, but he didn't make his team better. That's the big difference. Yeah, he was rude, obnoxious, but he didn't make his teammates better. They didn't go on to win Champions League because Zlatan was motivating them. Ronaldo has had his issues with teammates, not to the level of Zlatan, but they all are inspired by Ronaldo. They were Jordan, the same thing. He got on his teammates behind, but they all were inspired to win championships because of it. Zlatan does it, in, like I say, he's more arrogant and cocky and a jerk than Ronaldo or Jordan ever was. So if you're talking about modern day players, Cristiano Ronaldo in football is the closest to Michael Jordan.
Thomas, who would you say?
It might sound strange, but there's different ways of leading, and I know you can compare both, but Messi leads by example, for instance. Messi doesn't lead verbally. Messi doesn't get in his teammates' face. We all wish he would at times, be it at Liverpool or in Roma, when his team needs him more so from a technical standpoint, but really from an emotional standpoint, getting into people's faces and force them to get that really edge in order for them to get back into a game or win a game. And that's the knock on Messi throughout. So I agree with George. If there is a similarity between a soccer player, modern soccer player, and obviously Michael Jordan, it's probably Ronaldo. I give Virgil van Dijk, although he hasn't done it as consistently for such a long time, but if I look at the last 2 or 3 years for both Liverpool and the Dutch national team, he's become an inspirator. He's become a tough guy. He also can be a loving guy, put his arms around you when it's time to rock and roll, when it's time, when you got to put those rally hats on. Virgil van Dijk leads by example and leads verbally as well. And I've always liked that. We were taught in the Netherlands to be verbal and to be direct, and to do critical analysis of yourself and of your teammates as well. And that boils onto the field sometimes in an emotional fashion, where those great players try not only to get the best out of themselves, but also take that team, the other 10 players, on their back in order to attain success.
Our comment section does agree with you both. Jorge Wolf Hurtado agrees CR7 is the closest. Mo Sadi dropping knowledge. Remember Ronaldo in the final of the Euro Cup? Mic drop. Talk about a mic drop. If that doesn't signify a leader, I don't know what does. And you all know that has a very sacred place in my heart. I'm speechless over it. Our last topic of the show, I want to talk about Arsene Wenger, because today, 2 years ago today, Arsene Wenger managed his last match as Arsenal manager. And I wanted to ask you both your favorite Arsene Wenger memory. And we have 2 minutes left in the show, so George, we'll begin with you.
Oh boy, Arsene Wenger. I love the dude. I would say that 2014 FA Cup, I had to write it down just to make sure. 2018 FA Cup final against Hull City, when they were down 2-0, and then they were able to roar back, Aaron Ramsey scoring the game winner in extra time for Arsenal. So that would be my favorite Arsene Wenger moment, the adjustments he made to get his team back in the game and win that cup.
And I'm assuming you're wearing red in honor of Arsenal today. Thomas, your favorite moment?
My favorite moment was a personal moment, outside of the fact that Arsene Wenger changed the face of English football. He ripped up that old handbook, of Route 1 and drinking and eating bad food. He instituted modern science, data analysis, and nutrition. But when we had a trip with the under 20 team, and I was the coach, and we played Arsenal, the English national team, and Man United in a 14-day trip, we were at the Emirates, and he was unbelievable in showing what nutrition is like, what, as I said again, data analysis, what science, how important it is. He was a very, very open man, a man way ahead of obviously football at that time in England, and changed the course, in my opinion, more so than anybody else in the last decade.
Very interesting, because we're actually going to have that debate tonight on our Sports Burst PM edition of the show, so you guys won't want to miss that. This is a reminder to join us Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Facebook, YouTube, and beIN Extra for our latest edition of Clásico at Home. We relive the May 2009 edition of El Clásico featuring Pep Guardiola's treble-winning side. And yeah, there were 8 goals in that one. See in the comment section. And again, we're going to talk Arsene Wenger and get the latest from Tancredi Palmieri live from Italy tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, so you guys won't want to miss it. Thank you, George. Thank you, Thomas. Ciao for now, guys.